welcome back to another episode of Tech Pro Unicorn. I am your host, Michael Grace, and today I am joined by Michael Whitehouse. Michael is the guy who knows a guy. In 2014, he came to Groton, Connecticut, knowing no one at all. A year later, after diving into networking with both feet, he was a major connector in the local community. In 2020, he went global and began connecting entrepreneurs, investors, speakers, and others around the world to people they need to know. He offers his services as a networking concierge, making connections and building strategic alliances around the world. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here. And I can tell you're not from Connecticut because it's Groton. But
Groton.
Only people in Connecticut know that. So that's our shibboleth.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Michael's also, I always like to point out when I have the pleasure of having other podcast hosts on the podcast, say podcast 3 times in a sentence. So Michael is also the host of the Guy Who Knows a Guy podcast. He's also the author of the book, guess what? The Guy Who Knows a Guy.
Good to be consistent.
And his website is guywhoknowsaguy.com. I love the tie-in on the branding between the book, the podcast, the website. It's just awesome. So again, thanks for taking the time. We're going to talk a little bit about networking, which you've now essentially made a career out of.
I know a little about it, yeah.
Yeah. So why is networking such a hot topic? We just had a guest yesterday that was talking about networking. Why is it on fire right now? Everyone's talking about the need to network.
Well, so networking has always been a thing. For the longest time, it was the differentiator between the haves and the have-nots. The haves have a network. The have-nots have not a network. So, back in the old days, 19th century, a lot of the 20th century, it wasn't really talked about, but that was how wealth stayed in the wealthy classes. You go to Harvard, you meet other people at Harvard, and then you go to get a job and you say, where are the Harvard alumni? Hey, I'd like a job. I'm from Harvard. And they're like, come on in. Welcome, fellow Crimson, or whatever the heck they call them. So there are certain spaces where they networked and preserved things. And then as the world got bigger, a lot of that kind of, I don't know if it broke down because I've never been in those rich people spaces, in the old rich, old money groups. But what happened was that networking, as it broke down organically, it was replaced artificially, which is not a bad thing. And same thing with community. It used to be you lived in a town of 3,000 people and you knew all your neighbors and you had a reputation. And so you knew what business to work with because you'd heard about them. Well, now small town is 30,000, 40,000. You can't know all your neighbors. You can't know all the businesses. And so we have Google reviews and Facebook reviews and structure. Same thing with the business network. It used to be everyone in business knew each other. Now, a lot of the owners, your local bank manager is an employee of an international corporation. They're not a bank manager. They're someone they're basically data entry, unless they're a local credit union. So instead of that organic process of the leaders in the community coming together at the Rotary Club and the Lions Club and whatnot, we have built new networking structures. The exciting thing is these are open to everyone because partly the phenomenon is on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, but you can be who you aspire to be. And now this is not a fake it till you make it thing. If you're fake, people will feel that and it's no good. But if you're a good, honest person trying to make connections and make people better, people are open to hearing that because everyone's so different that everyone has something to offer. And so this is why networking is getting big. It is the great equalizer. As you said in my bio there, in 2014, I had no network at all. Like, yes, I'm a white guy with gray hair from the middle class, but and there's certainly some advantages that gave me, such as being raised well, and my family has given me modest amounts of money, not a small $1 million loan, but modest bit of support. But really what I've done is built a network from zero that anyone could do. Not literally, almost anyone can do what I did. And that's why networking is so huge, is no matter where you are, you could be working at McDonald's, could you do it if you're homeless? Maybe. Again, if you're disabled, if you got 4 kids, and you're a single parent, like if you don't have any time, there are certainly challenges that could make it harder. Mm-hmm. But no matter for most people, and probably anyone listening to this show, you can network your way to anyone you need to meet if you simply set your mind to it. And, important thing, go into the attitude that you are there to give value, not take. And that's the most crucial part.
I love it. You referenced Harvard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or an Ivy League, right? And it's almost like this exclusive club,
Mm-hmm.
these folks. I had the privilege of going to San Francisco State. I went to Arizona State. I have a great network within those two colleges, right? But we're not Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you build how do you build a network beyond your education? Maybe how do I get to the Harvard folks and chat with them?
Sure. So one of the great assets I had when building my network was starting with nothing. When you start with something, you get comfortable in it. You're like, I know the alumni network. I've got some coworkers. I got some family. You don't really push. I had zero. So I went in there and turned up to 11. When I moved to Groton, I went to every chamber event. I went to every ribbon cutting. I went to 3 people on the street corner. Hey, guys, how you doing? I'm Michael. I'm new in town. Anyone I could connect with where there might be people I want to meet, I was going there because I knew I had nothing. So one thing is, if you know nothing and have nothing, just try everything. Or if you have some of the network, you know some people for your alumni network and whatnot, and you're still not sure what to do, pretend you have nothing and just go out wherever people are. Find a chamber event, find an online networking event. That's in lack of anything else. If you don't read my book, you don't read any blogs, you don't have anything to work on, you're just flying blind. Just start going to events, meet people, see what happens. Better, and you'll save a few years if you find where people are. Reach out. For example, reach out to me. If someone were to email me, michael@guywhoknowsaguy.com, and say, hey, Michael, I heard you on the podcast, and I'd love to, where do I start? Where do I go? I can point you in the direction of some great networking groups that have great people in them. That is a good start, because everyone, I'm sure you all know 6 degrees of separation. Everyone's connected. So you start getting connected, and that gives you more connections and more connections. Also, there's Facebook groups out there and LinkedIn groups for certain things. So whatever your business is, join the groups, join the trade associations, join the communities. And then again, the crucial thing is you're going in with the intention of giving. And now giving does not mean giving away your stuff. It doesn't mean giving away free service. One of the most valuable things you can give is your connections, to which you might then say, well, I don't have any connections. That's why I'm listening to you. So everyone has some connections. Early on, when I was in Groton, or when I came to Groton, I'm still there. I went to a chamber event, and I knew, 20, 30 people in the area at this point. I think it was my second event. And the first person I talked to was a realtor. And we had, a pleasant chat of pleasantries. And then I moved on to the next person, and we had a pleasant chat of pleasantries. And I went to the third person. And again, I know 2 people in the room and 30 in the county. And I said to them, who are you looking to meet? Maybe I can help you. And they said, well, I'm really looking to get in touch with realtors. Making connections with realtors would build my business. I said, really? Do you know that realtor over there? And they said, no, I have not met them. I was like, all right, come with me. Let me introduce you. And it sounds like, that was so crazy and improbable, but it's actually not that improbable, because now if they're like, I'm looking to meet with Michael Grace, that's improbable that I would know that exact person. But if they're looking for, I'm looking to meet with podcasters about business, well, I might know one of those. I'm looking to meet with realtors. That's a pretty common category. 1% of the population of America has a real estate license. So, most people are looking for a category. That category is common enough that you might know one. Once you know one, now you're a connector. You've made an introduction. They're going to say, who can I introduce you to? And you might say, well, I'm really going to meet the most connected people in town. Like the connectors, the givers, the ones who like to introduce people. Who do you know who's like that? And usually most people are like, oh, you got to meet Fred. Fred's the guy. Like there's a guy, Robert Bliss, down in Dallas. I went down to visit Dallas a couple weeks ago, and I met with one of my networking contacts for the first time in person. It's like, do you know Robert Bliss? You got to meet him. He's got like a library of local books of people he's met, and he's just the networking guy in Dallas. And so she's like, you got to meet Robert. So now I know Robert, and now his voice is being spoken on a podcast. But it's simply about finding some way to give, and being a connector doesn't mean you have to know 100,000 people. It means you have to know one person you can introduce. And that will lead to one more introduction and one more and one more. You do that 5 or 6 times, you're a connector, and you get a reputation as a good giving person.
I think you just summed it up so nice by saying approach everything with giving value, right? So many times I accept a connection on LinkedIn, which is immediately followed with, thank you for accepting my connection. Have you been trying to blah, blah, blah? And they immediately go into selling, right? Which gets them, I've got to build a bot for this because my next reaction is to unlink them, right? Like, great, you just had an opportunity to have me be a facilitator. Had you approached and been like, oh, tell me about yourself, blah, blah, blah. If we would have developed even the smallest of relationship and then you said, hey, could you help me do whatever? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But if you approach, right, with just, okay, now I'm connected to Michael. Hey, I'm trying to sell you this. You immediately lose the privilege of being connected to me, right? And you just get disconnected. Or worse yet, I'm going to taunt you, say horrible things to you, and then disconnect from you, right?
I like to turn that around because to me, those are prospects. I don't do as much sales training as I used to, but I have affiliate arrangements with people who do. So when I get those, I'm like, does this approach work well for you? And a surprising number, they're like, actually not. I'm like, that's not surprising because it's not very good. Would you like to know how to do it better? And now I'm prospecting them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I love getting those. And that's the thing about network too. You get a network of resources. It's really, there's a lot of coaches and consultants, trainers out there have pretty easily accessible affiliate programs. So you create a menu. So when you meet someone and they have a problem, you can solve it not just with your service, but with the services of 40 other providers. You solve their problem, you make a few bucks. Win-win.
I love it. Something so simple. Approach it with giving value. Mm-hmm. In the book, you talk about the networker mindset. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of it kind of gets into that deciding you're a connector. You know, me walking up to the third person I know in the room and saying, who would you like to meet? Maybe I can help you. Mm-hmm. And you can do this with the first person you meet. You know, you've just moved to Topeka and you don't know anyone other than like the flight attendant who helped you with your bags. And you go into a networking event to the first person you talk to. I'm a connector. Who are you looking to connect with? And they'll tell you. And you probably won't have someone yet, but you're like, all right, well, throughout the night, I'll keep that in mind. And over the next 90 minutes, as you're meeting people, you keep that in mind. If you meet that person and be like, hey, I found him. I found the guy you're looking for. Here he is. He's a realtor. He's right here. Check it out. You can also leverage that by, first person says, yeah, I'm looking to meet with, bank managers. Mm-hmm. And then you talk to the second person. They're like, yeah, who are you looking to connect with? Well, bank managers, actually. I'm a bit of a connector, and someone I know is looking to meet with bank managers. Do you know any? So the second person just heard the message of, I'm a connector, and can you help me help someone else? Which is two powerful messages. One is, I'm a connector. Good guy to know. You want to know me. Even if I am going to try to sell you something, I'm also going to try to help you. And two, let me show you how I do it. I'm not asking for who I need. I'm asking for who they need. And it's just easy. You can ask for who you need, which can also work, but asking for who they need is just as easy and gets you that benefit. Plus, they're not worried about what are you going to sell to them. They know if you connect to them, you're going to introduce them to someone and expand their world. Now, maybe the person you're going to introduce them to is going to sell them something, but it creates a little bit of separation, a little bit of credibility in that way. But then along those lines, it is always important to know who you do want to meet. So if somebody says, who can I introduce you to? A good answer is anything other than, I don't really know. Unless you're like retired and you're just hanging out at the chamber events because you like hanging out with business people, you should have a better answer than, I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. It just sounds right. I just have this picture of my mind, right, of maybe a cocktail party or an after work gathering. There's a group out here called Networking After Dark,
Hmm.
um, which is just a bunch of people that come together. We pick a bar. The guy who organizes it is great, and there's everybody from every industry. It's just this hodgepodge
Hmm.
mishmash of everything from metaphysical providers to people that provide technology and services and such. Um, and so everybody just kind of moves about the room, and there's just this buzz, right?
Hmm.
When you think about being a networker, um, it just seems cool, right? It seems like you're the gregarious, fun party starting kind of person in the room. You're kind of the energy or the light in the room. Besides that feel good aspect, what are some of the benefits of being that guy?
Yep. Well, and first, I want to provide a warning to the aspiring networkers out there. It is really easy to go to those events and have fun and enjoy the open bar and eat the hors d'oeuvres, because usually it's really good. The restaurant's trying to show off how good they are, and completely waste your time. Being at a networking event in and of itself is not networking. So no,
Guilty.
there's nothing wrong with that, if you don't need it. So, for example, a lot of the banks in our area will pay for any of their employees to go to any networking event. And so you go in, you see there's like 4 employees from one bank and 6 from another and 5 from another, and they're drinking and they're eating and they're hanging out and they're having a good time. They're there. Some the fish could jump in the boat. Somebody could be like, "Oh, do you work for this bank? Hey, I actually have a question for you. Can I ask you? Do you mind if I ask you about loan stuff?" And now maybe a loan comes out of it. Who knows? But if you're planning to network your way to success, you can't do it by just hanging out and drinking the wine. You actually need to take some action. Um, the other good news there is for those who are listening, being like, this isn't for me. I'm an introvert. I don't like people. I'm kind of shy and awkward. I can't
Yeah.
network. Incorrect. Because networking is not about being the party guy and the clown in the room. Because unless your business is that of being a clown or maybe a DJ, being known as the funny guy doesn't sell anything. They have to actually know what you do and you have to use some technique. And that works just as well if you're shy, awkward, and uncharismatic. Um, so the first thing is that attitude of being a connector and having that, because when you go in, one of the things that makes people insecure is they're like, well, what do I have to offer? Who am I? Why do they want to talk to me? um, Especially if you're newer in business. If you're more established, you're probably not wondering how to network because you're probably thinking you already have a network and don't need to do it. So if you're listening to this and saying, how do I network? It's probably because you're newer. And so you got a little imposter syndrome going on. Maybe you're trying to act as if you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. Your monthly revenues are $437 a month, but you're like, oh, business is going good, meeting lots of people, a lot of irons in the fire. I got a lot of things going on. People can feel that lack of authenticity when you're pretending to be successful and you're not. But you don't have to pretend to be a connector. You have to choose to be a connector. And as soon as you choose to be, you can start making connections. If you have a Facebook account with more than 300 friends on it, you can be a connector. Somebody asks you for something, you post on Facebook, hey, does anyone know a? 300 people are now going to be asked the question, does anyone know a good roofer in town? And somebody probably does. And boom, look at that. You're a connector. Thanks, 21st century. Welcome, technology. So that is the easiest way to provide value. And once you can provide value, you don't need to be intimidated by anyone. Because even that multimillionaire CEO might have some issue with sciatica and he doesn't know a good chiropractor because he's never been to one, or a good physical therapist, and he's about to go for surgery. And by introducing him to the physical therapist that your brother-in-law went to, you save him from having to go to surgery, for example. Money does not solve all your problems. So by having that network and that connection, you have solutions that people need no matter how big and important they are. And so by carrying that message, it makes you comfortable to approach anyone, to talk to anybody. And then the other very important thing, so it's great to give. It's great to have that giving mindset, be generous. You also need to know what you want. There's a chapter in my book, which I wrote for an audience of one, which is this guy right here, called Monetization Makes the World Go Round, because I made lots and lots of other people lots and lots of money with my networking. long before I made myself any money with my networking. I was so focused on, I got to give value. I got to be helpful. I don't want to be selling. I don't want to be that guy. And I gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and gave. And I'm like, sure, we'd like to get paid someday. That might help. Now, often you have your business. You're selling printing. You're a realtor. You're a mortgage guy, whatever. That's where your monetization comes from. But always think about, once I've met everyone I want to meet, how do I get paid? So that's kind of the end game. And then in between is to leverage the things I said before, being a connector, to get introduced to everyone you need to meet. If you're a mortgage broker, you need to meet every realtor in town. So everyone you meet, hey, who do you need to meet? I need to meet more realtors. Who do you know? And in our county of 250,000, there's like 1,200. So if you live in a bigger city, there's more. So wherever you are, literally 1% of the population has a real estate license. So never assume you know them all. There's always more to meet and always more connections to make that will then lead to that monetization, assuming you set up that path.
I love it. Oftentimes folks ask me like, hey, do you know blah, blah, blah. And if I don't really know them, I tend to not be that networker, right? I tend to not pass that referral on, or I'll caveat it and go, sure, I know Michael and he was on my podcast, but that's all I know about him, right? Mm-hmm. So I qualify my referral. Can bad things happen? If you make introductions and then you get blamed, right? Something goes bad and they're like, you introduced me. I can only imagine it probably happens in personal relationships all the time. You introduced me to this girl and man, what a train wreck that was, and you're now associated with the baggage.
So I would estimate, let's say, I've done probably 700 one-to-ones in the last year, which means I probably made, I only started tracking recently, but I probably made about 2,000 introductions in the last year. And I'm not super careful with them. Like, I don't vet everyone off of the introduction as I just met this person. I met them at an event, we had a Zoom call, and you should meet. I have yet to have one of those blowback.
That's awesome.
And I think so, go in that example of, the person who introduced you to your crazy ex. You're probably still, now you might joke with them and be like, oh yeah, thanks, Bob. It was so great of you to introduce me to Susie. She was something. Thanks, Bob. But you're still going to be friends with them. You're not going to be like, you jerk. And I'm not vouching for this. So that's different too. I'm not like, this person's amazing. You can take their name to the bank. I guarantee they're going to be a great person. What I say is, here's someone you should meet. You have this in common. You both told me stories about being in corporate and how they treat you like crap. I think you should talk together about stories about being treated like crap in corporate. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I think that you'll be able to share some stories. Where that goes from there, I don't know. That's up to you. But because even if you do vet someone extensively and do all the background checks and whatnot, they could still just not get along well, or have who knows whatever problems. So I don't worry about that too much. I just kind of put them together and see what happens. Now it's different if we're putting together a business deal or something like that. But even then, I might still put two people together and say, effectively, here, you're both people who seem pretty nice, and I haven't heard any bad things about either of you. So talk it out. Now, if they decide to do a deal together, then they're going to do their due diligence. Then they're going to do their vetting. But I'm not explicitly endorsing them. I'm just saying, hey, you're someone you should know.
I love it. I use a little trick, right? I have a couple of different sets of business cards because, believe it or not, at conventions and stuff, it's still the quickest way to exchange, contact information.
Business cards are still a thing, and they will be for a long time.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I see all these digital cards now, where you take your phone and you just tap your phone, and LinkedIn has the whole UPC things. Oh, scan me, I still like business cards for that. One of my business cards, my name's on it, my contact information, obviously, it looks just like my other business card, but underneath it says Chief Unicorn. And people always go, like, what is that, right? And what a conversation starter, right? And then I get an opportunity to say, yeah, this is what my company does. This is my role there. These are the services we provide. And it opens a great conversation, right? That otherwise I sound salesy going, let me tell you what I do
Mm-hmm.
and why I think I'm, able to help you. So there's all kinds of little cool tips and tricks and techniques that you can do, even if I love what you said about being an introvert, right? You can still be an introvert and maybe you're not the approacher, but you put yourself in that networking situation
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to get approached simply by being there, right? And looking open to people coming up. And you don't have to do that awkward, so many times I'm a outgoing extrovert, right? So I'll walk up to a group. Michael's in a deep conversation with somebody, and I'll be like just standing awkwardly next to him until he looks at me, and I'll be like, "Hey, how are you?" And I just insert myself. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes less well. I now don't do it if it's like a guy and a girl just hanging out together. I don't awkwardly try to insert myself because that has gone awkward several times where I'm like, oh, you guys are networking, you're networking, and I'm now in cramping your style, So
Yeah. Well,
uh,
so on a couple of those points, so on the business cards, you're totally right that they are still very valid. If I meet someone at an in-person event, which are starting to come back now, if I meet someone at an
yes,
in-person event and they say, and usually with a bit of pretentiousness in their voice, they're like, "Oh, I don't have a business card. I have a digital card." I don't think more highly of them. Um, and so let's say I scan your LinkedIn code. Okay, now we're LinkedIn connected. What's that do? You are now in a pile of thousands of people, and I don't know if LinkedIn has a way to search by connection date. If it does, I don't know what it is. So business card, you're in my pocket. And in fact, I think I still have a bunch of business cards in my pocket I haven't followed up on. I should get on that. But they're there. So I went to an event 2 weeks ago. I still have the cards, in my pocket. I can go grab them like, oh, shoot, I need to follow up with these. If we connect through LinkedIn, you connect through text message, whatever, that's just in the digital stream. You're gone. You're lost to me. I may want to follow up, and I don't remember which name was. I don't remember whatever. Without that card, it's out of luck. But yeah. So,
mm-hmm.
and also, I want to share a tip with your audience about if you want to be approached. Um, so first off, think about if you're in a room who you want to approach. You don't want to approach a closed group of people. If they're all facing each other, you're going to think like, oh, they're having a conversation. I don't want to get into that. Which means if you are face to face with someone, even in a party of two, no one's going to approach you. And so if you find one person, talk to them for 90 minutes face to face, you may meet no one else. Hopefully that one person is really cool. But Ivan Meisner, who's the founder of BNI, has this concept of open twos and open threes. So if you got two people that are talking, instead of being face to face, you stand at a 90-degree angle. So you're kind of talking to each other, but facing the room. And it shows people we're open. There's an open spot here. You can come right into it. And open three is the same way. Instead of forming a triangle, you form kind of a U shape, so that again you're open to the room. And you can have an open open 4, open 5, open 6, but you create an intentional open space for people to come into it. And the same thing, if you're sitting there on your phone, you look like you're busy. No one wants to interrupt you if you're on your phone. So to the point of if people are talking, I will drift over to a conversation, just kind of hover near it. And if it is a networking environment, parties are different, social environments are different. If it is a networking environment, and the man and the woman talking, and they're in a closed too, I'll still drift over there. And it is possible, 1 in 100 times, that this is actually like they have really made a connection, and they both want you to go away. It is more likely that he wants you to go away and she wants him to go away. Because networking events are not pickup events. I've known, in all my time here in Southeast Connecticut since 2014, I've known one couple that got together at networking events. More often it is some dude who is, sees wine and girl and is like, it's like a bar. Hey, how you doing? And she's like, I'm here for business. Leave me alone. And then this is much larger problem than simply this. But there's the larger problem is that there's a lot of men out there who see women as open game for them, and the women are trying to like do their things that aren't romantic, run a business, get clients, go to the grocery store. And it only takes a couple of those obnoxious dudes to give someone a really bad week. I mean, imagine you're going through your week and 3 times during that week, someone was obnoxiously hitting on you. And most men don't tend to have that experience. Most women, unfortunately, do. Because if you meet 100 people and 3 of them are jerks, those are going to stand out. So don't be that guy. But also, the corollary is if you see that man and woman networking, you can kind of read the body language, and sometimes you'll see that the dude is kind of like, hey, and she just sort of can't figure out how to politely escape. And so if you do the networking thing, you kind of drift over the conversation, this is something I recommend. If 2 people are engrossed in conversation, they either know each other, in which case they'd like to meet someone else because they know why they're there, or they're meeting for the first time, in which case they're exchanging all of their data. Where do you work? Where are you from? What are you into? Who are you looking to meet? You can just stand next to them and get all that information without having to open the conversation. And if they're polite, they'll invite you in. But in that unlikely case that it is, the guy macking, she might take advantage of you coming up to be like, hey, new guy. And he's like, grumble, grumble, grumble. And she's like, tell me all about your business in detail.
And please. Let's do it over there.
Yeah, tell me, and just don't stop talking. Just keep telling me everything. So did you go to high school? Where'd you go to high school? Tell me about all your friends. Sometimes you're not actually interrupting a good thing. You're throwing a lifeline. Again, this is a corner case that's happened. I can think of a couple times it's ever happened in my dozens, hundreds of networking events. But yeah, don't. Right now you might run across an engrossed business conversation because somebody shared what they do for business, and someone else like, oh my God, what is that? I totally need that. And they're going into it again, read the body language. If they're really leaning in and they're trying to get it, then don't mess up someone else's deal. But at the same time, we're here to meet people. And if you're looking to sell, don't try to make a deal at a networking event, because someone will innocently walk over and be like, hey, how you doing?
I love it.
Now the moment is gone. So
yes.
You want to talk to them long enough to know you want to talk to them, and then set up a follow-up call. And that's when you can go in depth on the deal.
I love it. So with all the people you meet, how do you keep track of them? How like, this is just more of an administrative organizational, I guess, right? Because I have tons of connections. We go to events all the time. I meet all these people, and I'm always struggling with, what does that person do again? Like, where do they? And sure, I could go stalk them on LinkedIn, but sometimes that doesn't give me the full story. So is there a technique that you use to maybe help you remember details about these people?
The first thing I'll say is I don't worry about it that much. A lot of people are like, oh, you're a networker. You must know 10,000 people's names and all that. No, I have ADHD. My memory is like a sieve. I don't remember anything. So, and I acknowledge that. I'll meet someone again and be like, I remember we met. I remember that you've got like a big black dog, and that is all I remember. What was your name again? Because usually you remember to pull up like one fact. So it's not that I don't care. It's just, and now, I'll do 30 one-to-ones on Zoom a week. So when I'm online, I keep I open up a Google Doc and take notes as we're talking. So I can open up that file and find the notes. Every once in a while, I'm like, oh shoot, we talked on the phone in the car. I don't have any notes. So I don't really have necessarily an amazing system. That is one of my goals. As my business hits a certain point, I'm going to hire a full-time assistant who I will throw data at them, and they'll sort it into something, which will allow me to be a better, more efficient connector at a professional level. But yeah, so I do the best I can. Another thing that I do is I have what I call a friendly follow-up email sequence. So I don't send out salesy emails. If I'm sending out an email, even if I'm selling something, I write it like a person, not like, check out the amazing new product from Michael Co. I'll write a story. I'll say something interesting. Or I'll share useful content. Check out this podcast I was on. Check out this interview I just did. You might find this part interesting. And then I also have a sequence that when I sign people up to it, once a week they get a useful recommendation. Could be a book, could be a video, a TED talk. If it's my own stuff, it's an interview with someone else. So it's not about me, it's about the person I interviewed. And it's useful, interesting content that's not at all salesy. It's just like, hey, check out this thing I found. You might like it. And what that does is it lets them be reminded of me. When we met, they hopefully learned what I do and what value I provide. If not, that's okay. They can look me up again. But they'll be reminded, so if they might need that at some point, then when that email pops up, they'll be like, oh, Michael, yeah, I haven't talked to him in 6 months, but he knows a guy. I need a paver. I bet he knows a paving guy. Let me reach out to him. So if I meet 20, 30 people a week, I can't follow up with 20, 30 people a week. That would be not just a full-time job. Like, I probably meet 1,000 people a year. So the next year I'm meeting 1,000 more and following up with 1,000. I can't make meaningful relationships. So what I do is create effective relationships. I provide value greater than zero. And if they self-identify as someone who's like, I think I could benefit from this relationship, they'll reach out and creates a good weak tie. And in the course of the conversation, it's always kind of evaluating when I meet them at the event. Then should we follow up and grab a coffee or do a Zoom call or whatever. When we're on the call, what's the next step from this? Is it just I'll introduce you to a couple people and you'll be on my friendly follow-up list and maybe we'll talk in the future? Is there a collaborative opportunity? Do I have an affiliate partner who has a service that might provide to them? But the first thing I will say is accept the fact that if you start meeting a lot of people, you probably won't remember all. If you do, awesome. That's great. You got some cool technique. Like I think FDR had a campaign manager who could remember every person he met across the country and could name 100,000 people or something crazy. He's a mutant. That's cool. Good for him. Hire him to be your campaign manager. He's amazing. But if you can't do it, it doesn't mean you can't network. Networking is not about stupid human tricks and being like, look, I remember your name from 9 months ago. Great. I mean, that makes me feel good, but I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't.
Yeah. I love it. It's almost like an excuse because I've heard people be like, oh, I need to set up a CRM system I'm going to use the free version of HubSpot. And I'm going to set up a CRM system and I'm going to put Michael in there and I'm going to write down everything, that I remember. So next time I'm going to meet with Michael, I can pull that up. And I'm like, oh, have you done that? And they're like, well, no. And that's why I don't network. And I'm like, wow. Any other excuses you have?
I used to work for a company where they call that polishing the stapler. Because people would go to training. This is a magazine publishing company. People would go to training, they get home, and they'd try to set up the perfect CRM, and they'd need to make sure their office is clean, and they need a comfortable chair to make calls from. And their old phone's not really good, so they need a new phone, and they got a new headset, because you can't cold call on an old headset. You got to have a new headset. And I think I might need to reinstall Windows, because my computer's running a bit slow. And it was... And they called it polishing the stapler because they're like, we've trained you everything you need to know. You have everything you need. Start dialing the phone. You don't need a CRM. You don't need this. Just start doing it. Wherever you are, start taking action. Nobody's keeping score. I think sometimes people have this idea of they've seen the fish out of water movies where the poor kid tries to get into the rich people party. And the rich people are like, oh, I can tell you're not rich even though you're wearing a nice coat. That doesn't happen in real life. Most people you meet at a networking event are just this guy who happened to start a business. The guy who owns the local HVAC company worked for an HVAC company. His boss yelled at him one day and he said, screw you, I can start my own. And now he's got his own HVAC company with 10 employees. But he still thinks of himself as some kid who never finished college and knows a lot about air conditioners and heating. And he's just this guy, and he'd probably be more interested to talk to you about beer and football than about business. So, and I've yet to find this. I'm sure there's that business space of the elites. I think it might be in corporate spaces, which I don't do as much work in, where they are so judgy. But in all the entrepreneurial spaces, and I talk to a lot of millionaires. I've yet to meet one. They're all thinking, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? How can this relationship be beneficial? They don't care if I remember their dog's name. Now, if I do remember their dog's name, it's going to help. It doesn't hurt. But I'm not going to lose a contact or lose a deal because I don't remember that it's their kid's birthday or because I don't ask them about if they had a cold last week. That's extra credit. If you provide value, they'll deal with someone who doesn't remember anything personal about them. Yeah, how do you think so many jerks are in high corporate positions? They don't remember anyone's birthday or name.
I love it. It's one of the things that I tell people all the time about wanting to start. They're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to start a podcast." I'm like, "So why aren't you?" Well, I can't afford, the Shure, blah blah blah, $800, blah blah. I'm like, okay, if you bought one of those mics, you're crazy, right? Like, you don't need that. You can start a podcast with the free AirPods that came with your phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you can start building an audience and eventually get sponsors or monetize or whatever, and you can build up to all the fancy, cool equipment that honestly makes marginal difference in a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Stop with the excuses, right? I mean, I love just there's so many opportunities to become either a better public speaker or break down your fears of networking and go to these events. They're all over the place. You can just search, networking events. I don't care what city you're in. I don't care if you have 5 people in your town. There's all these opportunities to go formally network. There's all the informal opportunities to just walk up and just be a nice person, right?
Yes.
And go up and talk to other people. And you just never know who you can meet. And I'm passionate about networking. I love the opportunity to whether it's at a convention or a formal networking event, or it's one of the primary reasons I love being a podcaster, right? I get to talk to people and learn about people that I otherwise would have never met. And it's just awesome. So, on your website too, just to point out, there's the Power 5 networking tips that are available for folks for free that they can download. You're out there kind of spreading the wealth of knowledge on networking and in appearances. You do coaching. You have a book. I'll plug the book again, The Guy Who Knows a Guy. So thank you for putting information out around networking. I think it's a fear sometimes that folks have about meeting people. It's nice to have someone trying to break that down and make that easier for folks.
Yeah, and the key takeaway I would give people that thinking about networking is that people don't know what league they're in. I learned this back about 10 years or so ago, and I met this gorgeous woman. I'm looking at her like, whoa, she is out of my league. Lucky for me, no one told her that. Like, there's not a league assignment sheet. And since she didn't know, she dated me. It was crazy. And I realized it's the same thing in business. Like, you talk to the big shots in business, they don't realize what league they're in. Like, they don't realize they're not supposed to be talking to you. Only you know that. So especially now, like, we're in one of the most democratized times in history in terms of being able to make connections. And so I definitely encourage folks to go to guywhoknowsaguy.com and get the Power 5 networking tips. And if you go to the right, assuming you're on your desktop and not a phone, you will see something to sign up for a call with me. And I'd be happy to get on a call and share and give pointers and who knows what else. If you're on your phone, you have to scroll to the bottom and the calendar will still be there. So, but yeah, go to guywhoknowsaguy.com and I'd love to talk to you.
Also plugging the podcast again. I'm scrolling through Michael's website right now, and under his podcast, I only point this out because it's appropriate. There's a picture of Michael with a mic, and it says, "In the 4 Unicorns Design Recording Studio." And being the Tech Pro unicorn, I didn't know that I had 4 unicorns out there running around. But it's kind of funny. There's a unicorn recording studio. I'm like, ooh, got to go there. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's my friend Patrick Howard, who actually got me started on podcasting. I made some posts on Facebook like, you should start a podcast. I'm like, I don't know how to start a podcast. They're like, I do. Come on over. I'll take care of it for you.
That's awesome.
And then I discovered Anchor.fm, and my first episode, the interview was recorded on my phone, like not special equipment, my Pixel XL, put it on the table, hit record, and try not to bump the table too much. And then Patrick did the editing for me afterwards. But yeah, originally it was that, and then it was all online through Zencaster, like we are now. Yeah, you can absolutely do a decent podcast for $0. You can do a pretty good podcast for like $50.
That's awesome. Well, Michael, I thank you for dropping all the knowledge and again, breaking down some of the barriers and concerns around networking and being the guy who knows a guy.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's always good to find a unicorn.
There you go.